In this video, I'd like to talk about what are capital assets. Alright, so what exactly is a capital asset? We hear the term thrown around. We talk about capital gains, capital losses, things of that nature. So we have capital gains or losses. We need to define what exactly is a capital asset. So the tax law really defines what a capital asset is by exception, basically listing out things that are not capital assets rather than specifically stating what is a capital asset. Most things are capital assets. I'll start that way. Your home, you own some stock, bonds, your car. Let's say I don't know, you bought a copyright. Let's say you bought some land. All right. Those are going to be capital assets. These things are capital assets. It's sort of a catch-all. It encompasses a lot of things, but I'll say what it does not encompass. So what we don't have as capital assets. So let's make a list here of what is not a capital asset. Let's take a look at these. This may make it a little easier to figure out if you're dealing with a capital asset by ruling it out. If you have an exception, then it probably is not a capital asset. All right, so let's take it from the top here. Inventory. If you're a business and you have inventory, stock in trade, things such as property that's held primarily for sale to customers in your ordinary trade or business. So say ordinary trade or business items. That should be an R, not an F. Business. These items would not be a capital asset. Let's say if you have depreciable property that's used in a trade or business. So let's say you have a building, a car, truck, or a van that is, go ahead and delineate this a little bit here, used in a business. These items here would not be capital assets. We'll talk more about this in later videos. Those fall under what's called a 1231 asset. They go through this thing called depreciation recapture, but rest assured we'll touch on that and more. So if a company has a patent, invention, if they design or model something, then let's say a secret formula, copyright, if it's a literary, musical, or artistic composition, or even a letter of memorandum, that property, which is created by the taxpayer, so property created by the taxpayer. All right, that's going to be, like I said, things like copyrights, patents, secret formulas. These things would not be, again, capital assets. Accounts receivable or notes receivable. All right, so your accounts receivable and notes receivable are not capital assets. And then certain U.S. government publications, we're not going to worry about so much in this class, but these things are items that you're not going to find in a capital asset. So let's run down a list of common ones just so we can sort of put the concept to work here. So let's talk about, let's say if I have, I don't know, a guitar store and I have guitars for sale. So guitars for sale. All right, and then this is going to be, is it a capital asset? And we're going to either give it a Y for yes or an N for no. All right, so in this example, if I am a guitar shop and I have guitars for inventory, would those guitars be capital assets? And they would not be. Those would not be uh, capital assets. If I own my own home, and I do own my own home, as I'm sure many of you do, would my own home, so personal residence, would this be a capital asset? And yes, it would. This would absolutely be a capital asset. Let's say if I am an artist, all right, so let's say I drew a painting, all right, a self drawn or self painted work, that would not be a capital asset because it's self created. And we just talked about this one. Let's say we have a note receivable for, I don't know, let's say we have a long term contract with one of our vendors or somebody. We have a note receivable. That note is not going to be a capital asset. Remember, that falls into the exception there. Oh, here's a good one. All right, so let's say I buy some copyrights and some patents and whatnot. So purchased copyright, or say like a patent. You remember earlier we said that copyrights and patents are not capital assets, but because I purchased these are not self-created. These are actually capital assets. So watch out for the language there. In this case, the overarching exception is self-created, and in this case, we bought it, so we obviously did not create it. Let's say you have a work van for a plumbing business. So you say, well, it's property, right? It's got to be a capital asset. It's not actually. So remember, this is a no. This falls under 1231 assets. All right, we'll talk more about that later, but it gets into section 1245, section 1250, this whole fun thing called depreciation recapture. It's actually a ton of fun, and yeah. So let's say we have a taxpayer that owns some Apple stock. You yourself, you own Apple stock. Is that Apple stock that you own a capital asset? It absolutely is. Yes, it is. Let's say you bought, I don't know, 10 acres of land and you're hanging on to it as an investment. That would absolutely be a capital asset. Here's a little one. How about your own television? All right, your own television. As a taxpayer, you're not in a business, then yep, that is a capital asset. And I don't know. Here's another one. This one kind of blurs the lines a little bit. Let's say you're a car dealership. Car dealership and the cars that are on the lot. Would those be capital assets? And no, they would not be. Remember, this is going to be inventory. It's going to fall into that exception. So if we scroll back up to the top and we look at our exceptions here, all right, we look at inventory is not a capital asset, stock and trade, things that take place in the ordinary course of a trade or business. If you have a building, car, truck, van, etc., otherwise, if it's used in a business, that is not a capital asset. And then if you create property, such as a copyright, patent, secret formula, etc., that is not a capital asset. And of course, your accounts receivable, notes receivable, those things are not going to be capital assets. And that sums up what a capital asset is, and probably more importantly, what a capital asset is not.